All right, everybody, we're going to call it to order. Mr. Gary Miller has agreed to be here tonight. We asked also that Cyrus would be here, Cyrus Western, but he was unable to attend because he is in Billings, I believe, tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open things up with prayer, but before I do that, I just have to go through some of the housekeeping. This is meant to be like you're in somebody's living room, so this is informal, we're just talking. This isn't a debate, and we're not here to get antagonistic or in any way, shape, or form. We're just here to learn about the candidates and to be able to ask them questions, which they are gracious enough to share their time to come here and do this for us. So this is a really great opportunity for us. And what am I missing? Did I mention the snacks? We have some snacks and some water back there, and there's some cups. Thank you to those who set that up and made that possible for us. The bathrooms are just through the double doors on the left, and I think that's it. So I'm just going to go ahead and...
There's fruit in the refrigerator. I figured it was too hot to just let it sit out, but when you're ready...
Okay. Yeah, so toward the end, we're going to have a more informal portion of the meeting, and then we're going to, and you can just get up and get some snacks then, and have an opportunity for some one-on-one conversations with the candidates. So I'm going to open up in prayer, and then we'll hand the floor over. Dear Jesus, Lord, thank you for this time, and thank you for these people. Thank you for Mr. Miller, that he could come and share his time with us and just be with our discussion and be with all of us as we're traveling away tonight. So I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, coming on this warm night, but I am going to keep my coat on, so. But I appreciate the thought. So I'm running for Wyoming State Representative for District 29, which is about a block, starts about a block south of us, or north of us, and then goes all the way up to the hospital, high school, and a little bit further beyond. So really shared and proper. I'm running because I really love this town. And I'll tell you, and the state, and I'll tell you a little bit about my history. I hope I don't bore you too much. So, engineering major in college, worked as an engineer for a while. While as an engineer, I was offered a job with a coal company that was setting up an office in this town called Sheridan, Wyoming. That was 41 years ago. And I thought, wow, moving to Wyoming might be pretty fun. So I took the job, moved out here. My wife to be, Susan, who's sitting there in the second row, third row, is moved here the same month I did. And we met a year later and got married a year after that. Well, as an engineer here, what I was doing was going to all of our coal mines and helping them become more efficient. So I was in a department called the Productivity Improvement Group, and I spent most of my time at Bridger Coal in Rock Springs. If you know the Outlaw Inn there, that's where I stayed an entire winter one year. And Glen Rock Coal, and back then Spring Creek Coal was just coming onto line, so I didn't do a lot there, but some interesting work. Well, one of the things that I think I was most proud of is that I did the study that turned set the work schedules at what's called 4x12, whereas the miners would work 4 days in a row, 12-hour shifts, and then 4 off. And we were one of the first companies in the country to actually employ that schedule. The cool thing about it is that, of course, the mine was able to keep running 24/7 without problems. But also, because the coal mines tend to be a long way from where people lived, it reduced the commute times of everybody working at the mines. So it was a win-win. And safety was not hurt at all. So a win-win on that. So anyway, after a while, I decided that the coal company I worked for wasn't really interested in what I was doing. And so I got more and more interested in the investment world. So I went back to school in Atlanta to learn how to be an investment guy. And number one goal, though, for both Susan and me was to come back here, because it only took us 2.5 years to figure out this is just a remarkable place. So in 1997, I quit my job in Atlanta and took a job in Denver that got us closer. And we moved back here, and I actually commuted to Denver for a year before getting more settled here and not having to go to Denver. In the year 2002, 22 years ago, I founded Frontier Asset Management, which is an investment management firm here in town that employs 50, and we have 50 employees. We have clients in all 50 states, and we manage about $7 billion. So the firm's been really successful. And we've really done that with a combination of Wyoming values, so hard work and actually being nice to people, and really good analytic skills that I've developed over the years. So the company's been real successful. Who here knows somebody from Frontier Asset Management? Anybody? There's one. So anyway, it's been quite fun, but as part of that, I've learned how to start and run businesses, and also my finance, I think, can really come in handy. So what I would like to focus on if I'm elected in Cheyenne is to focus on the budget and the finances, because we are going to have some issues going forward. I hate tax like everybody else does, but we need to figure out how we're essentially going to handle the sort of dwindling revenues we may be getting from coal. You know, we may all think coal is great, and I do. I mean, I work for a coal company. But the rest of the world is still going to be hammering away at coal. So I think we need to dig in now and figure out how we're going to keep our tax base where it is, but still provide the services we want and keep the budget balanced. So hopefully my work in efficiency for the coal company, I've actually started 2 businesses, and my finance capabilities will really help a lot to dig into both the revenue and cost side of the budget. One other thing I think I can help on is that, you know, the state has $25 billion in its investment funds, which is part of what we live on year to year, or what the state lives on year to year. And it doesn't take a lot of extra return to add a lot of money to the state budget every year. So just as an example, 1% a year is $250 million. So not that anything, quite frankly, not that anything I can do is going to improve things by that much, but perhaps with looking at some of the laws that restrict how those funds are managed, and working with the treasurer's staff, that perhaps we can certainly do better than we're doing now. So that's another piece that may be helpful for the state if I'm elected. So, are there any questions? Why are you still wearing, I'm sorry. Yes.
What are your thoughts and plans for how to get jobs into Wyoming or into Wyoming?
Yes, great question. So my, hopefully my business background will help. I actually spoke at the Treasurers Conference about 4 years ago on the title of the talk was Starting a Business in Wyoming. So I think that certainly we've got too many regulations that are hampering small businesses. I mean, that's always a problem with, government just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And as they do, they hurt small businesses in particular more and more and more. And it's not just the federal government, the state and local governments kind of get in on that game too with licensing and all that. So certainly looking hard at that. An idea that I have that I haven't, don't know, what may become of it is the fact that if we have all this coal here and the EPA was recently scolded by the Supreme Court in saying that you can't regulate carbon dioxide emissions, that still doesn't mean, places are going to like our coal. But we can like it, and so perhaps we should look at keeping the coal here. We've got at least 2 power plants that are being mothballed right now. So that Glenrock Coal or Glenrock Power and the power plant in Kemmer, and I think Bridger's always on the ropes. So perhaps we can get those power plants going again, burning coal, and even build another power plant or 2, and then look to hire or look to bring energy intensive businesses here. So that's kind of a big thing, but it is going to be harder and harder to be selling coal outside. China certainly likes it now, but we've got the coastal states don't want us to ship it there, so it's hard for us to do that, although we are doing a lot right now. But that may be something that generates a lot. But the big thing is just going through the regulations and reducing just getting a business started. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Starting a business in Wyoming is actually really easy. We have people from all over the country that are doing that. But maintaining your business, making it profitable with all the rules and regulations are really hard. I'll give you an example with my work. So 30 years ago, as an investment advisor, the Investment Advisors Act from the Securities Exchange Commission pretty much just said, don't lie, cheat, or steal. That was pretty much the regulations. And so that sounds like 3 pretty good rules. So over time, though, the regulations have just gotten more and more and more and more, and they're really not helpful. And I have a feeling that really smart attorneys at some investment firms, have figured out how to lie, cheat, and steal, and still abide by all the rules. So that's an example of just over-regulation, and I'm sure the state has some issues with that. When I was on the board of the Senior Center, we did the feasibility project for the Greenhouse Living Project. And there's actually a rule, a law, that says that you can only have so many beds, depending on your population, so many beds for senior care based on your population. And so according to the law, we actually couldn't do the Greenhouse Living Project. So we had to go to our legislators to give us a waiver to do the project. So there's a perfect example of what can happen. Oh.
What is your definition of small business?
I don't know, but certainly the retail stores on Main Street, perfect example. My firm has 50 employees now, which I'm kind of thinking is a lot. But certainly in that, I would say 20 and less. I'm not talking about, the manufacturing type plants like, Vacutech and Weatherby and firms like that I wouldn't call small. I mean, the world would call them small, but I don't think Sheridan would. So, yes?
You had said that you need to come up with a way for taxes since you're going to lose money from the coal. What would you propose to that? Because I've heard where some people want to implement the state income tax.
Yeah.
How would you?
Right. Well, I'm a no to that. And I was fortunate enough to meet with the economist Arthur Laffer in Nashville a couple months ago. And we actually spent an hour and a half talking about taxes and inflation. And he's the big, tax cut. He was Reagan's tax cut guy. He was Trump's tax cut guy. So he knows all about cutting taxes. So not a fan because, of course, that hurts growth. And so not a fan of that. I think we have a bit of a reprieve right now with energy prices being so high. The state's getting more money than budgeted. So let's put that away. Let's save that. And then that gives us a few years to actually figure out how we can get that budget, how we can get our expenses to balance the revenue side that we do have. Now, I do want to add one thing, excuse me, and that is I would suggest that perhaps the alternative energy sources are getting a good deal relative to our carbon-based fuels. And so perhaps, you know, if you're going to talk about a tax, perhaps wind and solar should have an equivalent tax to our carbon-based fuels, you know, to make it even, you know, based on BTUs or something. But other than that, I can't see anything on the tax side. So we'll see how it goes. Yes?
Do you have any thoughts about areas that Wyoming currently wastes budget money or doesn't spend well?
Well, that's a good question, and I haven't dug into each individual place yet. You know, the biggest budget item is schools, and, you know, a lot of people have talked about the administrative costs of schools now. And again, that goes back to regulation. There's so many regulations from the federal government and some from the state government that schools have to have administrators to fill out paperwork. My friend Mitch Kraft, who was an assistant superintendent of the school district, just resigned because he discovered all he was doing was filling out paperwork, and he actually wanted to do something useful. So he's going to now help smaller school districts get their acts together, because it's, you know, it's harder for them than, say, School District 2 here in Sheridan. So I know it's everywhere, but I haven't really dug into the specifics. I'll also say that the first thing to do is just make it simpler, because there are a number of revenue sources and then, of course, a number of expense items. And the lines between the revenues and the expenses are all over the place. And so I don't think anybody knows where all that money's going. And so the first step is to figure that out. So, yes?
Gary, thanks for coming.
You're welcome.
You say that you own a Frontier Asset Management
Uh-huh.
company.
Well, I don't own all of it.
Right,
But-
okay.
Yes,
And so that you would focus on budget and finances.
yes.
How would you adjust fund allocation with no conflicts of interest? I mean, that's your area of expertise.
Can you say that again?
How would you adjust fund allocation,
Oh.
the state fund allocation, with no conflicts of interest? You say we have $25 billion. So
Oh,
I'm
that's,
hearing you
sure.
have an asset management company and the
Sure.
state has $25 billion. I want to know
Oh,
how you're going to
okay.
make that a better thing.
Yeah, sure, fair enough. Well, certainly there'd be no, and I did kind of semi-retire. I'm still on our investment committee, but, well, we just wouldn't manage any of the money. So I have spent time with Patrick Fleming, who's the chief investment officer, in the past, just helping out. So I think now I have the opportunity to do more. So the big thing there, though, of course, is they have rules and regulations on how each pot of money is managed, and some of them do stifle some of the things they'd really like to do. So one of the issues being that capital appreciation is really not considered return until it's realized, and so that causes the investment group to sell things they don't really want to sell, perhaps provide less income than they really could to the general fund. So, so things like that.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So what that means is that if you're elected, then you will ensure, is there like a no competition clause that you can get involved in, or to prevent Frontier Asset from being a party to state investments?
I'm sure there is. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm on a number of boards, and I go through the same thing. The boards I'm on that have money, we actually send the money to Vanguard,
Vanguard.
who my firm actually competes with directly. But so that's what we do with the nonprofit boards that I'm involved with.
So the second part of that was
Yeah.
budget, and you stated that we're maintaining a basic taxes. If you cut the budget, you're going to hurt growth. Cut the taxes, that is, going to hurt growth. If we have a reducing amount of input from the coal
Mm-hmm.
money coming in,
Yeah.
and we have a level of services up here, you're saying cut any of those services is going to hurt growth?
No, I'm saying that Actually, I don't really think I said that at all. What I'm saying is there are ways to provide the services we provide now, or fewer, I mean, and that's a different argument. You know, what services are we providing? But that if we can do it more efficiently, get organized better on where the money flows all are, that we can save a lot of money there to help with the losing coal revenues.
So it's a different argument. So you say cutting state budget is going to hurt, cutting taxes is gonna hurt growth. What is the growth you're talking about hurting?
No, it'll help growth. Cutting taxes helps
I'm looking
growth.
down, you just said cutting taxes hurts growth.
I don't,
Okay, not trying
Anyway,
to be
yeah.
antagonistic, I'm not trying
Yeah.
to do that.
yeah,
I'm
no,
not- I
cutting
understand.
taxes is, I mean, that's a wonderful growth engine.
Is it?
Absolutely. If you leave more money with the private sector,
Yeah.
then the economy's gonna do better. In fact, to summarize what I really want to do with the state, it is to make it run more like a business.
Great.
Because, you know, bureaucrats, they're incentivized to add staff and add to their costs. They're not incentivized to be efficient. Businesses, of course, are incentivized to be a business.
Absolutely.
So that's where the issues are.
So government intervention can cause more regulation.
Exactly.
efficiency.
Exactly. And in fact, the bigger government is not only does it just not take away money from the private sector, it then adds more rules and regulations, it then becomes a negative.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the interesting things about Arthur Laffer's work is he actually figured out where the optimal tax rate is for in the long run, the government to be the biggest. And you're going to say, well, we don't want that. But it's a low tax rate because it provides more growth in the economy, and so a bigger economy in the future, you know, if the taxes are 20% instead of our now 40% or whatever they are, 20% of a really big number can be more than 40% of a small number.
Yes.
And so then everybody wins on that. So
Flat rate might be something to look
it
at.
absolutely, yeah. So that would be the issue there. So
Well, speaking of
Good.
taxes, and forgive me for asking too
I don't
much.
see any other hands, so
If
go
there's
ahead.
hands, you're welcome to call upon them. But Kimmer is gonna go forth with this new.
Correct.
We all know that's coming.
Yeah.
Gates is gonna have his way.
Yeah.
What do you think about taxing electricity going out of Wyoming? We're gonna absorb the danger, we're gonna absorb the having that stuff in our backyard, which is not a bad idea. I worked on a nuke before in a different life.
Mhm.
But the thing is if they're gonna build that sucker here and ship juice to other states, I think it should be taxed 100%.
Well, see, that goes into wind and solar. You know, we can't have our carbon-based fuels be at a disadvantage. And so I would agree with you on that. You know, again, I hate to raise taxes anywhere, but if we're losing it from our carbon-based fuels, then alternative sources, including nuclear, certainly should be part of making that up.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
So I have a question, more towards the recent events surrounding the COVID mandates and
Mhm.
whatnot. How are you gonna represent, because I am in District 29, how are you gonna represent me when I don't wanna be told what I need to wear, what shot I need to get, and how many I need? I think that's walking all over my constitutional rights. How would you stand up for us?
Sure. I'll start with the vaccine mandates. Nobody should be required to take a shot, something in it. But I'm going to say on the mask side, there's a lot of talk that what the state did with masks and things was unconstitutional, but actually it's not. There's another clause that says if there's a big medical emergency that the state can, you know, not abide by the first part of that particular part of the Constitution. I believe that going back 2 years ago, you know, nobody really knew for a while. And so we needed to perhaps be cautious. But I do think that we were way too slow in realizing what science was saying and getting back to normal.
Okay, but, so that, what we knew back then,
Mhm.
but what we know now,
Uh-huh.
is the masks don't work.
Correct.
So how are you going to defend, once you're elected
All
now?
right.
How are you gonna defend that so we don't end up in that same situation? Because you can't just put lipstick on a pig
Sure.
and say it's gonna be fine, because they didn't have any research, and you can't keep changing things every week or two. I mean, how are you going to try to bring it
Sure.
all so that?
Yeah.
you see
Well,
what I'm
yeah, I do. Well, my undergraduate work was in engineering, so a lot of science involved in that. And absolutely, everything needs to be analyzed, evaluated. We want to err on all else being equal. We don't want to do that. So I will be an advocate for really looking into it, but I can't tell you what might happen the next time.
Right, but if the state doctor's saying this, you're a scientific man, are you gonna be looking at those other avenues where other data was coming from?
Oh,
instead of just
absolutely.
going from the CDC,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
doesn't seem to know
Yeah, absolutely,
one thing from another?
absolutely. So I'm guessing you're not a fan of Dr. Fauci?
He should be arrested.
Yeah. That's probably why he retired.
Yeah, but that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
To make sure you would look at those
Yeah.
avenues instead of just going with the way.
Absolutely. I love research. I really do. So, absolutely. Yes.
So, if our economy starts to tank,
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel about gold and silver? Like gold depositories?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
She says, if the economy starts to tank,
Uh-huh.
what are your feelings on having institutions where we could use gold and silver bullion instead of the current currency?
Oh, okay. Quite frankly, I don't know that, and of course you can throw Bitcoin in that group too. I don't know that really going to help an economy tanking, unfortunately. And so much of that comes from, of course, what the Federal Reserve Board does and what the Congress does. And the Federal Reserve Board is, they shouldn't be doing anything as far as setting interest rates. Maybe they should make sure banks don't go bankrupt. But other than that, it's ridiculous what they've been doing for now since 2008. The market can set interest rates just fine. But as far as what we can do here in Wyoming, it does get a little more difficult. We don't have as many things we can do. One of the questions I'm actually surprised I haven't heard is about the big property tax increase we've had lately. But that could be because the state has this big pool of money. We could defer things like property tax during a poor economic time to help, not only help retirees but to help companies get back to business. Again, less money for the government, more money for private individuals. So that is something that perhaps we can do. Unfortunately, some of the mill rates are in the Constitution, although actually I guess most of them are maxes, so I guess they could all go to zero. But that may be a way to help during a bad economic downturn. Unfortunately, we are tied really closely to the U.S. economy, and so it's hard for us to be able to do a lot. And I guess your question about gold and silver sort of falls into what the Federal Reserve Board has been doing,
Well, weren't the central banks already set up as a bail-in situation? If you have your money in the bank and the economy tanks on Friday, they can take your money?
no.
Central banks. Okay.
I mean, there's deposit insurance, which again is one of those things that probably shouldn't exist, but it does because most of us don't know, where to put our money. We don't know how solvent the bank is that we're putting our money with.
How sure are we that's going to be anything when you need it? That bank insurance,
Yeah.
the FDIC.
Well, we're not 100% sure. on any of this. You know, a lot of what we do is unfortunately sort of rely on the fact the federal government's not going out of business. I don't think that's going to be a problem in the next 5 years. But yeah, we need to be cognizant of what's going on there. One of the cool things I've done recently, which is one of the reasons I retired from my company, is that I joined the Republican Governors Association, which is a mechanism to fund Republican governors in their elections. And we also have meetings 4 times a year. The Republican governors do work together a lot. You know, they all have their different ideas, and sometimes they're pretty cool. But they're a good band of good conservative values that are fighting the federal government constantly. And the more they work together, then the better, you know, the better they're going to do. And that was one of the reasons the EPA, they sued the EPA on the carbon dioxide mandates, is that 19 Republican governors actually filed suit, which was a big help in getting that settled the way we wanted it settled. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Representative Mark Jennings, he's not in this district, but he brought a bill last session to study property tax acquisition bill. That is, one will be taxed on what they pay for their home, and no more than that year to year to year. As it is now, it's ad valorem, to where your home is reassessed its value on a regular basis, and your taxes invariably increase year to year to year.
Correct.
Which I think would hurt senior citizens and people on fixed incomes. My state representative, I don't live in your district, and I still want to know who you are and where you come from. My state representative voted against a study to see what that would look like, because he said a study would have cost $50,000 according to its author. He said that he thought that was too much money to spend to study whether or not it would save his constituents money on their homes. How would you address something like that if it were to come to your attention, or you were to be asked to sponsor it?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's just back up and look at just a little bit behind it. Obviously, property taxes have gone up way too much recently because of the valuation increases we've seen, okay? But a lot of property tax funds education. And, you know, the cost of education is going up because teacher salaries need to go up somewhat in line with inflation, or we're not going to have any teachers. So there's lots of ways to look at that. A potential way to do it is to essentially defer property tax increases until you sell your home, to link it to Social Security and pay monthly perhaps, and have it only go up when at the rate of your Social Security increase, and then pay it every month. So then it's kind of a break even with your Social Security going up. So lots of ideas like that, but I think leaving it at cost is going to be difficult. And I think that also slows down people wanting to buy and sell. Excuse me?
You don't want to cut any services whatsoever?
Well, again, don't know. You know, we need to, you know, we know we have this elephant in the room, you know, called coal that may be dwindling away.
Yes, sir.
So there's lots of different options on property tax. And I would look at all of them. There actually is a report out that shows the various costs of all the different ways that property tax might be changed, and how it's taxed and all that.
Would you be interested
It's fairly
in a
recent.
study like that?
Oh, absolutely,
You
absolutely.
would? Maybe
Yeah.
you can sponsor it just to see what it would look like?
Yeah, I would love to do it.
Even if it costs the state $50,000,
To do the,
$100,000, this is what my state representative told me. He
Uh-huh.
said it's gonna cost $100,000, so we're not gonna spend it. So I told him, I said, you're gonna continue to raise my taxes every year, because you won't look at a way to make them more level? He had no answer to that.
yeah, and I don't know what it costs to do the study, or as I said, that's the kind of study I like doing.
Mark Jennings
So-
said $50,000.
Okay,
Sounds like it is a lot of money. I wouldn't write a check for $50,000 right now. When you're talking about the state of Wyoming and all its residents therein,
Yeah,
50 grand is peanuts.
yeah, it is pretty small.
Considering the money you could save your constituents in your district, especially the ones that have been living in their home for 45 years, it's paid for, the husband has gone on and passed away, the widow is sitting there, and her taxes go up every year, every year, every year. Would you be opposed to that?
Oh, not at all. I think there's all kinds of options.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And those are the kinds of problems I love, so.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
You want to fix them.
I just have a problem with, every time we talk about taxes and their necessity, we hold up education. Because everybody cares very much about education. So that's the little thing we hold up and say, we need more taxes, we need more taxes. We need to be honest about education. It doesn't need more revenue. It doesn't need more. It needs to do some cutting in some, not teachers, not the things that benefit students. There's cutting that could be done, but they don't need more revenue.
Yeah, and that could very well be. I think that, yeah, everything should be looked at.
It really frustrates me that that's the carrot we use to get people to buy taxes is, oh, don't forget we educate our children. Of course that's important. So we,
Yeah,
okay,
You know, right at 50% of Wyoming state budget, the whole budget goes to education as it is.
we've got.
Do they need more money?
They don't. They do not.
When's the last time you were in Sheridan College? You walk into Sheridan College, any main room you want to, and you stand there and you look around. There's a monitor, there's a monitor, there's a monitor, there's a monitor. All this stuff to keep our kids from focusing on what's in that book so they can learn something. They want to entertain them. Do you know what it costs to put each monitor in place? I stood in one place one time, I counted 6 monitors with different programs running. Is that a good expenditure of education sources, do you think?
yeah, probably not. We are certainly lucky, though, here in Sheridan to have Whitney Benefits that has, helped a lot out there. But, yeah, obviously, college today is a lot different than it was when we were kids.
Yeah.
A lot different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it has turned into a competition, between schools, essentially. Yes, Andrew.
I would like to know what your thoughts are on government sponsorship of business relocation to Sheridan, whether or not the government should participate in the costs, or whether or not we are a shiny enough apple to draw them here without having to also sponsor them.
That is a great question. So I moved here 41 years ago with a company that was given an enticement to come and start a regional office here. And I saw that the company wasn't really trying as hard as it should be to, be efficient and all that, and so moved on. But a few years later, NERCO left because they didn't have an vested interest here. And, and fast forward to now, this is the greatest place to live ever, I think. And so, yeah, I know. Well, it's just among us. Don't be sure the video doesn't get out. So I don't believe that. And I do get upset that we entice outside firms that don't have vested interest here. Now, again, there's a part of the Constitution that says that part of our money can go to do things like that statewide. But if we're going to do that, we need to look at existing businesses and help them. I noticed Dr. Strawn and his partner, starting an ammunitions company here. Well, they love it here. They have a vested interest here. So if we're going to do something, which I'm still, wondering whether we should, that would be more the company to do that with than with outside firms coming in. I don't think we should be giving money to anybody. But, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you. In the back again.
Okay, so
That's all right.
As far as the abortion stuff, because I seen that Wyoming's trigger law has been held up in court. So I would like to
What-
know your feeling on, I'm pro-life. And I also would like to know your feelings about, boys being able to say they're girls and competing in girls' sports, using the girls' bathrooms, et cetera. Are you gonna stand up for our girls? So if someone does have this mental issue, they can all have their separate whatever, but I don't think they should be in with our girls.
No. In fact, my wife should answer that question for me. We're very pro-life, very happy that Governor Gordon did sign the bill, although, of course, things always end up in courts these days. We'll see how that plays out. Yes, I'm not sure which way it goes. If you're a boy, are you a transgender girl? If you're a boy being a girl? Anyway, they shouldn't be in the girls' bathrooms, and they shouldn't be competing in sports. And, the reason we have differentiated the two, certainly on the sports field, is because physically they're different. And that was the reason. It was a biological reason to do that in the first place. So that's totally ridiculous. And having boys in girls' bathrooms just because they say they're girls, that's just as ridiculous. I mean, I can't imagine a little freshman at Sheraton High School having to deal with that. So absolutely.
Thank you.
Honey, did I answer that all right?
Probably 2 more questions we can do, and I'm going to grab the last one, so.
Can I,
I'm looking for someone else to answer questions. Somebody else ask a question.
can I tag along with Andy mentioned regarding the government-sponsored business organization? I like your idea of us not paying companies to come here. However, if we have Weatherby with 90 to 100 employees, those people are paying taxes. So maybe we might consider
Yeah.
being a little generous to
Wow.
a company if they can provide a tax base, because first of all, we need the employment. Second of all, the employees will pay taxes.
Yeah, I know. My feeling is it gets to be a slippery slope. And certainly Weatherby is a great example of someone who really embraces this town. I mean, we're the perfect town for them. Where they came from is not too different from Sheridan, except it was in California. So I can understand why they wanted to come here. But boy, it just does get to be a slippery slope. And when people do move here, it helps other businesses. Okay, it does not help the state finances, but it does help other businesses. And so that's a plus,
Yes.
definitely a net plus. But the tax part they pay is, we're pretty lucky here that our tax base is as low as it is. But anyway, yeah, good question. But I just think it gets to be a slippery slope, and then everybody's, oh, how about us? We love this place, and it gets to be too much.
Thank you.
Yes, the last question.
Last question. And I do apologize, we started a few minutes late, so it did shave off a little bit on our time, but I'm trying to leave a little bit of time for the individual questions at the end here. So the last question is, when you're making your decisions, whether in life or in legislature, is there a higher power or a faith that you use to help you make those decisions? Or what is your higher power of your faith?
Yeah, good question. So I'm not an active churchgoer, but God and I talk about every decision that I want to make. I think I view decisions as moral decisions. I don't necessarily think of them as Christian decisions, but God helps me get through that. But absolutely, you know, morals, good values. Wyoming does have wonderful values in general, do drive me on everything. So, yeah, great question.
All right, everybody, we'd like to move to the more informal, if you have an individual question or something that you didn't get a chance to ask, we'd like to invite you to come down
Okay.
now and just mingle.
Great. And I would like to say one thing that my wife is going to be mad if I don't say it. And that is we have a get-together on our front porch every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. And that we brought some little things here that you can grab so you can get our address and whatever, but that are really, actually really fun. And we usually talk about fun things and family and stuff, and then it, of course, generates into conversations like this. So you're certainly all welcome to come to those, too. So thank you for having me. This actually was really fun.